3, 2, 1.
Well, good morning. Seems like it's been, I don't know why it seems so long since done one of these. How long has it been since did one of them?
The last 2 were recorded.
Okay, so that's why it seems that way. Yeah, because I got iced in Oklahoma City. That was interesting. But luckily it was with a great group of guys. Our reps out there, EHV Solutions. Jason, Ronnie, and Billy were out there with us. And then, of course, the folks at OG&E are awesome. Daryl and Davis and other guys that were out there. So that was very cool. And Philip. So, but you're iced in, so you can't even leave the hotel. And it was pretty crazy out there. So we got iced in there. So instead of being there just a few days, I was there 9 days before I got back. And then driving across Arkansas was awesome. I was telling Jerry, all the trees, everything was iced except the road, which was great. I-40, at least you could drive on it. But the potholes, man, I-40 is just tore to pieces. Driver's hazardous warning. Be careful on I-40, man. The potholes are monstrous now. So, but the trees were just covered in ice. It was pretty cool all the way across Arkansas there where we were driving. But between that and some health stuff and all the other, people know by now what I believe in my faith. And so, we all have, man, that's the way it is. We're human, and the world and Satan, we're going to get busted up. And I got kind of busted up between health and that and traveling and everything else. And I had kind of a dip there. And then, of course, and I'd appreciate your prayers. My mom she was walking across the parking lot at Walmart, and a fella hit her in the car. So she got a broken left arm and left leg. So, and then, of course, with the way things are anymore, it's taking her forever to even get in to see a doctor. So she's at the house with a broken arm and leg. It's going to be 2 weeks before this Thursday she's supposed to see a trauma doctor about it. Probably have to put some plates and screws in there or something because of the breaks, I'm sure. Fractures, I guess, not breaks, but not being there. She's down in Louisiana, so you don't know. So with all that stuff, but it was interesting that I, in the midst of all that, when I got in my Bible, I read, and where I got a renewal of my hope, and the oddest of things, going through there and what we've been studying, which is the book of Luke at my church. I got back in Luke and was looking in that, and it was over where Peter betrayed Christ. And where I found it was really interesting is, when he's letting Peter know that he says, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. So you think about that, and I betray him all the time. You don't have to, of course, we think of that classic betrayal of, he's literally asked, you were with Jesus, weren't you? No, I wasn't. You were with Jesus? No, I wasn't. Everybody thinks that of his, betrayal. Well, if I know him and I've accepted him as my Savior and that, remember he says also, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? So I betray him all the time. And it really made me aware of that. And that whole let the Bible read you thing, instead of thinking, I don't want to do that, it's so funny, it turns it on. No, you do that, then what are you going to do about it? And so, and what do? The old love God, love others, and love self. And that's exactly what it's do. Once you realize the love that he shows you and that he prays for you so that your faith won't fail. Now, you're going to stumble and fall, but you're not going to fail. And look how he reconciled Peter and what Peter became and that. So Peter, was obviously wept bitterly when he remembered, and he just looked at him. You think about that. He just looked at Jesus, and that's all it took. Those eyes of Christ must have been incredible. So, and he realized what he'd done. He wept bitterly, but what do you do then? And then as soon as you get your renewal of spirit and get reconciled and realize how much he loves you, what's the first thing you do? And he tells you, then go and lift your brothers up, So love God, love others, and then love self. And so, and the great commandment, right? So I got a lot out of that, and that really helped to lift me up to know that example of Peter, and the betrayal that everyone, that's the one everyone talks about, the big betrayal of him 3 times and all that. But we do it all the time. I do it all the time. So knowing that he's praying for me, that's incredible. And that he loves me so much that he's the one friend that you can't go too far with. Any friend you got, I don't care. There's that line that you can cross. And once you cross that line, But with him, there's never a line you can cross, right? So he's that kind of friend. So, yeah, that helped me and renewed my spirit some and renewed my hope. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with a prayer like I always do, and then we'll get into this thing today. So let's pray real quick. Father, thank you so much for your son. What an amazing love and just grace, as the old hymn says, grace upon grace upon grace, the grace and mercy that he has, that he just shows us every single day, and it just never ends, and he puts up with everything that he puts up with us, and just continuously is there for us and loves us. And it's just amazing. And it's just amazing. And I lift my mom up, helped the doctors this week, help them steady their hands, and also give them clear minds to figure out the best way to take care of her. And Father, a lot of folks are going to be traveling here soon to the Auburn Meter School. The roads are getting worse and worse, it seems like, with all this ice and weather, and it causes all these potholes and things. It causes wrecks. I saw some really bad ones coming across Oklahoma and Arkansas, just where the tow trucks, the cables just went off in the woods. You couldn't even see the vehicles. They were trying to tow them up out of there. So please be with everyone on their travels to and from Auburn Meter School, because the most important thing is that folks get back home to their families. And same thing holds for all those people that are out there in the field, and all the people that support them, those folks in the field, provide them with the right equipment and design the things that they're putting into place, and that they also get home safe to their families when they're out there serving others. And again, Father, thank you so much for your son. Without what Jesus did on that cross, I couldn't even pray right now. So without his sacrifice. So all of these things I ask and say, according to the will of the one who paid it all, my precious brother, Jesus Christ. Amen. Cool. Okay. So today, 2022, webinar number 6 of 2022. And today we're the second installment. Here in a minute, JP and I are going to go ahead and do the third. We're doing episodes 2 and 3 on this 5S that we're testing out there. And so as it says there, part 3 will be next week. So today, quick recap. We're going to talk about how to modify a site on the machine, actually testing the meter, and then we're going to do both a customer load and phantom load test, I believe, on this. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Start with the customer load,
Then do a phantom.
but I don't want to spoil it. Stuff happens.
Stuff happens. That's right. Which always does. Anytime I'm out there, stuff happens.
And then you move on.
And then you move on. Yeah. Something always happens. Yeah, it's too funny. Yeah, because we like on this last trip, just when I was telling JP, an 18-wheeler driver just decided to come over and he didn't see me. So I was way over on the shoulder honking, and finally he saw me and came back over and he just gave me the little wave out the window like, sorry. I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So something always happens with me out in the field. So on the quick recap, remember we had gone out there and we looked at the display on the meter, and we noticed on the display on the meter, we're always looking on. You're wanting to see what it is. Look on the left side to see what form it is. This was a 5S. And then over on that right-hand side, bottom of the display, you're going to have either a delta or a Y, right? Telling you is it a delta or a Y configuration. And then it gives you the voltage that the meter sees. Okay, now, if there are PTs involved, you might see 120 on there, but it's actually, the primary is actually 480, and you got 4 to 1 PTs, right? But it's just what that meter's seeing. So this one's a little interesting in that it is a 5S. We looked on there and noted that it was a 5S. But when you looked up there, you also noted that they were using one of those transformers up there to do some lighting. And you actually they were running over to the other building where they had a 2S. So they're taking 2 of the 120 legs, running over to a 2S. They had more of a house meter over on the building next to it. It's a bunch of buildings in a big industrial area apart. We're between 2 buildings. And so when you looked on there, you saw a delta and you saw 240. But actually, if you remember, we've got this stinger leg we're using. It's really a high C leg. So when you connect it up and look on the machine, you're seeing 120, 120, 208. Because I can move. No, that's cool. I'm just going to talk about a couple things here. It's up to you. But, so can they hear me from over there, you think?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Look at this fancy new cameras. Ooh. Okay, so what we're saying is, you know, the true voltage on that stinger is going to be 208, because what happens is if you were to measure it, if you measured phase to phase A to B, you get 240, phase to phase B to C, 240. But if you measured that C, that stinger leg that we're talking about, because remember, you're going to use 208 to run lighting, and you're going to run motors and stuff with it. If you measured that C, if you measured from C to ground, you get 208. So you, like I said, you got the lighting over there. So actually, this is 12240, right? So, but the meter down there, it's when it looks on there, you're seeing 240 on there. So, but when you actually do the measurements and you're actually looking at the the machine, when we start to do the test, you're going to see 120, 120, 208, because we're going to set it up as a 4-wire delta and with a high C leg on it. Okay. So, because you realize if you've got a 5S and you've got a three-phase 5S, anything below 240 volt, there's going to be PTs involved, right? So, but in this case, there aren't any PTs. So, but still, the true voltage on that stinger leg is 208. Okay. I guess I can move the camera. Do I have authorization?
You can come over here.
I mean, this one. Just this one?
You're good.
Okay, cool. I don't touch the cameras because JP it's funny about his cameras, and I don't blame him. I don't even want to know how much all this stuff costs and how they work and all that stuff. I ain't playing with them.
All right.
So I could break a ball bearing with a rubber mallet, so I am not going to play with them.
You know who the most dangerous man in the room is?
Who?
Guy with a little bit of knowledge and a screwdriver.
Nice. I like it. Slot or Phillips? Either?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Just as long as it's a screwdriver. Especially when you see them using it as a pry bar and all that. You're like, oh, whoa, back up, buddy. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will, of course, interrupt as I do and maybe make some little comments and things. But now we've already kind of looked over the site, did an inspection. We checked to make sure all our connections are okay. And ground and all looked good. The pole ground, everything, connections to the can. Can was on there secured. You know, you do what you do, looked up. It was busy up top like always. But then we had that one, we were running over to the other building, to that 2S meter on the other building over there. So we just noted everything and figured out what we were dealing with. And then we're going to go ahead and start into the test. And as I said, I'll make some little interjections here, but it's fairly self-explanatory. And Ron does a great job here, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Look like she's all connected up. So this time we're going to use a different piece of equipment to test this one. We're going to use the 3 series. So have you got a sight in there? Cool. Okay, so she's ready to go. Okay, so you want to pull in there and show them what you did real quick. You just made it just called it demo 5. You put him a 5 in there. And which service did you select?
I selected the 4-wire delta, C high. That drops you down to 4-wire delta, C high over here. And that way it'll go ahead and run on through and everything will be
Nice. Okay, and then we're going to run that same test. We're going to do and on one of the next ones coming up, we'll go ahead and run a phantom load test. Okay, I guess we could have on that last side, but we got plenty of time. We're going to do it. So now you're starting through the test. You like the way that looks?
There's where it shows you C high.
Yeah.
208, 120. That splits them up.
That's right. So if you take a look at this. So it's showing my voltage, and then you see your voltage down here. See what it's 120, 120, and then 208. So it splits them up, right?
Get your C high.
The C high leg. And so everybody knows this is about the worst as far as sunlight conditions you could have as we're having right now. It's blazing where we are, and that sunlight's hitting right on that screen. So for us to be able to see it, that screen's got to be doing pretty well. VGA color monitor, thank goodness, because it is bright out here.
So we got the big ball lit up. It said start test, so we can start her up.
Let's go in here and add some pulses to that, because that went through. Did you see how it jumped up?
Something, yeah, that went kind of crazy. Did y'all notice? I hope y'all noticed that, the way that thing jumped like that. You want to just leave it on 3, not put the 0 on there? I mean the 30 on there?
Just did change the test rev right there.
Okay. What'd you make it?
10.
10? Okay. So you notice what he did right there and went through those so fast. They said, man, I'm going to add some more pulses to it so we can get a really better average in test, because it just ran through there. I don't know what was going on, but man, it went through it just super fast. Ran through them that quick?
98.491, yeah.
Okay. You know what we didn't do is take a look at primary versus secondary. We always talk about doing that. That's all right, we can do it here in a second. Compare the primary and secondary current, make sure we don't have a problem on the primary side. So we can take a look at that. It's got 98.491. That's typically not going to be good enough to pass anybody. 98.491. Alright. Okay, got a few things to talk about on this site. In the background, you probably hear that compressor cutting on and off in the background. We've got a lot of changing load here. Okay, this is one of those sites where the load's changing a whole lot. And Brown's going to go over here to the, if you look at the RMS table screen here, and we're looking over here, and like Brown was saying, you can take a look at the current over here. You can take a look at my current. See how my current's jumping around? It goes 4, 3. You can see it over here. It's jumping as well. If you look at the vector screens, it was doing the same thing on the vectors, wasn't it, Brown?
Yes.
So you can see where it's jumping right here. You're going to see a lot of changing going on in this thing. It's going to change a lot. So what that did when we ran the test, you saw just a second ago that Brown ran the test, and he ran it and it came out 98.7, I believe it was, something like that. So when he ran it 98.7, what we're going to do is he can also, if you take a look at it, we can also look at the harmonics here, because that's something to always consider. When I'm looking at my harmonics down here, I'm at 1 and 7%, it looks like. So those aren't bad, but that is something to just kind of check as well when you got a lot of changing loads, maybe a lot of variable frequency drives in there, a lot of motors going on. You might want to check the harmonics and remember the numbers on that, which is you got anything over 8% on voltage or 20% on current. That's not good, okay? If you remember the one earlier today, we had one that was up there really high, so that was pretty bad on the harmonics. So if we're looking at this thing, we know we got a lot of changing of the load. We know the load's changing on us a lot. We were up there, it wasn't like we were at 92, we were at 98, but still in a case like this, it might be a good time. If you want to try and pinpoint where the problem might be, you can go ahead and what we'll do is we'll do a phantom load test on that meter. Brown's going to put his jumpers in and run a phantom load test on the meter. And when we do that, if the phantom load test on the meter comes out okay, then we know what? The meter's okay. It's what's on the other side of that wall is the issue. Okay, so that's what we'll do now. We'll set up for a phantom load test. Okay, so you see?
Okay, so one thing to point out, a burst of pulses like that. I remember years ago when KV2Cs came out, and they added that C on the end, so now it was, they were communicating, right? So they had a communication card in there. Well, learned the hard way that when it goes into busy mode and it's sending out and it's trying to communicate, the pickups that we have, we're picking it up as extra pulses. So you'd be testing along, and I know, I'll give you some noises here, but it'd be boop, boop, whoop, 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 and then it would go in. You're like, and then my registration would be jacked up. You're like, whoa, what happened? And so we had to make adjustments, and you had to make sure, test mode. You had to do just different adjustments and your timing of when you did your test. And maybe didn't run as many pulses to catch it in between the busy modes and was communicating. But that's another instance I just wanted to point out where you might get a bunch of rapid pulses and the same thing would happen to you. Your registration would go off. So I remember that happened to us on those KB2C meters. Like I said, with the C, it had that COM card in there, and it would start sending out pulses to try and communicate.
What Brownland's doing, the very first thing that he does is he's opening up these shunts. Now I want you to notice something there. Notice how hard it was for him to open that shunt. Always keep in mind about that corrosion, okay? Because that corrosion affects you and I trying to do our testing. So you can see right here that he's doing he's going to make his connections. Remember, we've talked about this in the webinars a lot. He had to get around the long stroke blade at the bottom, so he's hooking at the bottom of his return and he's hooking at the top of the shunt blade. And notice he did that because he's an experienced field guy. He came in there perfect. He came with his hook that way on the bottom, right? So he hooked in that way at the bottom because you can get hung up trying to get them off when you're trying to get them off at the bottom.
Okay, you know that now I've changed my philosophy on this because the way that I do it now is when I show up, of course I do my inspection and I inspect everything. But one of the first things that I do, it takes just a couple of seconds. I go ahead and take my 3 easy hooks, depending on how many, currents I have. And I just take my easy hooks and I go ahead and connect them at the bottom before I've opened any of the switches and just let them hang. Why not? For 2 reasons, and I'll talk about it here in a minute. One is safety. Your first connection should always be at the bottom, connecting to your returns, right? Safe path. So that if you make a connection at the top and happen to go make the wrong connection, you've always got a safe path back to your returns and ground, so then in neutral, so you're fine. But if you connect at the top first, now you're hot on the top of it, right? And so now if you make a mistake down there, you can smoke the easy hooks or even mess up the power supply. And that's happened before in the past that we've heard from folks. So I always make the connections at the bottom anyway, but why not just do them before you get started? I always use the example of these sewer lift stations. Everything's running fine. You got the stink going, the grinder's going. You even got the little, we call it, the burp pipe that's always making the burping sound. You can imagine what we say out there in the field. But everything's doing fine. And then you get everything hooked up. You're ready to start testing, right? And boom, everything just shuts down. And now you got no load. Go ahead and hook those easy hooks at the bottom. It takes 2 seconds to put them on now because when nothing's open of any of the switches, it's easy to get them on there, especially the hooks on the tabs. And I always want to put them on there. I do up and down on for the corrosion. And now they're ready to go. And I run through my test. I set up my customer load test. All the other tests I'm going to set up, if I'm going to run a customer load even, I get everything set up. I do all my looking, right, my pre-test stuff. But then all of a sudden, if I lose my, if you lose, you don't have any load anymore, then what do? You just make the connections at the top, you're ready to go. I'm not trying to get around that handle and all that. And if you never use them, so what? You do your test, you put in your duck bills, you run your test, and afterwards, you just take them off. It takes 2 seconds, but it's a heck of a lot easier to do them pre-test and pre-opening any of the switches than getting around at the bottom. It just takes 2 seconds on and off if you don't use them. But if you do, you're ready to go, and all you do is make the connections at the top. You're already safely connected at the bottom.
In this way with his hooks at the bottom, he connected the bottom down here. And it's also important that you connect the bottom first. Okay, always connect that bottom first. She's got something connected at the ground, ground return, however you want to look at it. But have that connected first in case you have an issue. Because think about it, what if you're at the top? You can think of that as more of hot. And if you had a problem with one of those and got on the wrong thing, you'd get more trouble than if you connected at the bottom first. So I really like the way he did that. You come in at the bottom first and make your connections here at the bottom first, okay? Come in with your hooks this way. He came in at the bottom of the long blade like we've talked about a million times. Then he came up at the top of the short blade, okay? So now we're gonna run our current through our duct bills. We're gonna go ahead and do a phantom load test on that meter and see what kind of numbers we got to compare to that customer load test, okay? Because we weren't super happy with the customer load test. We understand there's a lot going on here, and 98.7's but still we're going to check out, I think it's really important to check out that meter on its own and see what it looks like. Hopefully we got one that's not 10, 10, and 10, huh? How many pulses was that?
It's just set up 8, 5, 3. rate comes up.
Waveform generator error, no signal, RMS faults, current on A. All right, so if you saw what he did, he just took his jumpers and he wiggled his jumpers on there a little bit for the corrosion. Because remember, we talked about that waveform generator area. That was a perfect example. I hope y'all caught what he just did. he's a field test man, so he ain't used to sitting here. You know, he's used to getting it. So he just reached over there and he wiggled it over there on his. If you saw him, he wiggled his easy hook a little bit to get a better connection there, and then it worked. Okay, remember we just talked about that.
So, talk about it all the time, and I've had so many instances of that in a corrosive atmosphere. Doesn't have to be. You don't have to be in salt water. You don't have to be. If you've got a big manure plant there, chicken house, some factory there spewing stuff out, whatever it is. If you have corrosion, though, a lot of times I've had to do that with easy hooks. I've just worked them up and down, and you're just coining that surface and getting through the corrosion, right? So that's what he had to do there, and I've had to do it many, many, many times. So a lot of times when you get that waveform generator area, if I know I'm in a corrosive area, my initial, and that's what waveform generator area is speaking to you about, is talking about connections, okay? So it's a connection issue. So you don't have a good safe path. It's saying, nope, I sent out some VA, didn't get the VA back that is high enough, so there's some problem there. I got a connection and a path problem, circuit path problem, and you got to fix it so that I can get a correct test. Don't want to damage the equipment. Don't want to, if it was a loose connection, you wouldn't want to fire up a load box and have your buddy standing leaning against the can watching you work. Whatever it is, you just need to make sure you got good path and good connections to get good tests and safe tests. So for the equipment and personnel. So you'll take those easy hooks and you'll work them up and down and swing them up and down and just coin that surface right where that the little hook is right there on that tab. It can get that much corrosion you get there so that it will affect it. Because if you think about it, that's not a huge surface area we're making a connection on right there. So if there's corrosion there, it will give you just what just happened there, which is waveform generator. Okay? So next Tuesday, we will be live, and we will be doing the one for the last of these where we finish up, we'll test the CTs. And don't forget to get on the website after this if you want to, and you can get a time slot at Auburn for us to do some private training for you. And just appreciate everybody watching. Glad to be back here again, and looking forward to seeing all y'all at Auburn Meter School. Hopefully my voice will hold up. So God bless y'all, and be careful out there. Thank y'all.